After the fall of Colt Maddox and the sealing of the ancient temple, Jaxon believed for a fleeting moment that peace might settle across the wild frontier, that the jungle would heal from the wounds carved by gunfire and greed, and that the beasts who looked to him as guardian would finally rest. But destiny is never satisfied with a single victory, and as lightning split the skies that night, the jungle whispered warnings that made even the predators retreat into their dens, because something older and far more dangerous than Maddox stirred in the dark. Places where neither Western law nor jungle instinct held power. Jaxon felt it before he heard it, the earth pulsing like a heartbeat beneath his feet, an ancient echo that reminded him of the murals inside the Keeper Temple, where a second amulet was shown, one lost centuries ago, incapable of awakening an entity known only as the Shadow King, a warlord banished beneath the roots of the world for trying to enslave both man and beast. Seraphine, who stayed by Jaxon's side instead of returning to the west, found an outlaw messenger barely alive at the jungle border, whispering that a new force had risen. A masked commander named Marshal Crowe, once a decorated Western officer now turned ghost-like mercenary, infamous for commanding the Black Spade Legion, a private army built from deserters, assassins, bounty hunters, and soldiers who sold their loyalty to the highest bidder. And he sought the second amulet, rumored to be buried deep inside the Deadwood Marsh, a cursed jungle swamp where skeleton trees rose from murky black water and no creature survived long enough to tell its secrets. Realizing the danger, Jaxon journeyed with Seraphine toward the marshlands, moving through tangled vines and fog-thickened air while the jungle animals followed him like silent guardians. But the deeper they went, the stranger the world became. Plants twisted unnaturally. Winds carried human whispers, though no humans stood nearby, and glowing insects scattered whenever Jaxon approached, reacting to something ancient inside him awakened by the Heartstone. As they neared Deadwood Marsh, the stench of smoke reached them first, followed by the metallic stink of blood, and through the mist they saw that the Black Spade Legion had arrived ahead of them, torching the marsh, digging through the mud with steam-powered machines, and using explosive charges to break apart ruins that had slept beneath the swamp for 1,000 years. Jaxon's anger simmered, but Seraphine warned him. Crowe was not Maddox. He was colder, smarter, and capable of predicting enemy moves like a chess master. And if he had brought an army into the jungle, then he was prepared for war. Suddenly, without warning, Crowe's snipers opened fire from platforms hidden in the trees, their bullets slicing through vines and ripping into the ground near Jaxon's feet, causing animals to scatter and forcing Jaxon and Seraphine into the water for cover. But unlike normal water, the marsh felt alive, clutching at their legs with cold fingers, dragging at them like it wanted to pull them beneath the surface. And it was only through Jaxon's immense strength and jungle instinct that they managed to reach a fallen log where they climbed to safety, dripping mud and breathing heavily. Then from the shadows came the slow clap of gloved hands, and Marshal Crowe himself emerged, tall, lean, wearing a bone-white mask shaped like a bird's skull, coat black as storm clouds, revolvers silver and engraved, with ancient symbols. His voice a low growl as he announced that the West could no longer be ruled by chaos and chance, that the age of beasts and wild men needed to end, and that he would forge a new order with the power of the second amulet, creating an empire where nature bent its knee to disciplined force. Jaxon stepped forward with eyes burning like emerald flame, telling Crowe the jungle would never submit. But Crowe only tilted his head, amused, remarking that Jaxon was merely a savage with luck, and snapped his fingers, summoning a dozen soldiers, armed with a mix of rifles and experimental weaponry looted from abandoned Western laboratories. And the battle erupted instantly, explosions tearing through tree trunks, vines whipping wildly as bullets shredded them, Jaxon swinging across branches to crash into soldiers like a tornado in human form, ripping apart guns, throwing enemies into the swamp, dodging mechanical traps Crowe had placed in advance, while Seraphine sniped enemies from the higher roots with deadly accuracy, covering Jaxon's blind spots and calling out, warnings whenever the marsh moved in, unnatural ways. But Crowe didn't stay to fight instead. He slipped deeper into the ruins his men uncovered, where a massive stone archway half buried in muck pulsed with a faint dark glow, the entrance to an underground vault where the second amulet was hidden. And Jaxon, after crushing the last soldier, sprinted after him, ignoring the mud, ignoring the roots that tried to snag his legs, ignoring the blood dripping from fresh cuts across his arms, because he knew the world would fall into war if Crowe gained that power. Inside the vault, ancient torches ignited on their own, flames glowing blue, revealing walls carved with spirals and symbols depicting the Shadow King, a towering figure with eyes of black fire, showing how the second amulet was a key capable of releasing him from beneath the world's foundation. And as Jaxon entered the final chamber, he saw Crowe standing atop the central dais, holding the amulet high, its black stone swirling with shadows that moved like imprisoned serpents. And Crowe whispered triumphantly, "With this, I will command both the West and the Wild." Jaxon lunged toward him with the speed of a panther. But the moment he touched the dais, a surge of darkness blasted outward, throwing him across the room and slamming him into a pillar with such force the stone cracked behind him, blood filling his mouth, vision blurring. But even broken, he dragged himself up because the fate of worlds depended on him. Seraphine arrived and fired directly at Crowe, but bullets dissolved into smoke before reaching him, the amulet absorbing them, growing stronger with each hit, and cracks spread across the vault floor, releasing tendrils of shadow that snaked up Crowe's legs, fusing with him, empowering him, transforming him into something far more terrifying than a man, his voice warping into a hollow growl as he declared himself the new Shadow King. Jaxon roared with all the fury of the jungle, slamming his fist into the ground and calling upon the Heartstone's power, causing vines to explode from the walls, roots to lash out, animals above the vault to howl in unison as the jungle itself surged through him, strengthening him beyond human limits, turning him into a living force of nature as he charged at the shadow-powered Crowe. The clash shook the chamber, roots versus shadows, nature versus darkness, Jaxon's fists glowing with green energy every time they struck, Crowe's corrupted armor, while Crowe hurled blasts of shadow that shattered pillars and tore chunks of stone from the ceiling, each trying to overpower the other as the chamber crumbled around them. Finally, with a primal cry, Jaxon seized Crowe's arm, crushed the corrupted limb, ripped the amulet free, and with the last of his strength, hurled it into a pool of sacred water at the chamber's center, where it hissed, screamed like a dying beast, and vanished in a burst of light that banished the shadows from Crowe's body, sending the warlord collapsing unconscious as the vault began to collapse entirely. Jaxon grabbed Seraphine and leapt through the falling debris, sprinting up the tunnel, dodging stones, roots, collapsing beams, until they burst out into open air just as the entire Deadwood Marsh swallowed the ruins, erasing all trace of the amulet. And as the dawn sun illuminated the jungle once more, Jaxon stood atop a fallen log, breathing heavily, knowing that as long as greed existed, new threats would rise. But he also knew something else. The West and the Wild now had a protector, whose legend was only beginning, a warrior who could not be conquered by darkness or men. And if viewers want to witness the next great chapter of Jaxon's life, the rise of new enemies, new jungle mysteries, new frontier wars, and the full becoming of the wild gunslinger, then they must subscribe to Old Whisper Stories, because the adventure is far from over and the frontier has many more secrets waiting in the shadows.